Hello everyone and welcome back to another video of Ash Fire 383. In this video, I'm going to be talking about I Am David. So I watched it last week with my mom and I really love the movie. So basically, the movie I Am David talks about a boy named David who is in a type of Bulgarian camp. And he was in there since he was very young, and he doesn't know what happened to his mom. He doesn't know what happened to his dad. He just follows this one guy who's also in the camp, who's kind of like his parental figure or like a mentor in a sort of way, who helps him like do things and stuff like that, because all of them are forced to work. It's sort of like a labor camp in that sense. But I think it's basically due to the people in the camp having a different point of view than the others. I think they're like a communist labor camp. So basically, the guy found out that David stole a bar of soap. So instead of David getting in trouble for taking the soap, he says that he stole the soap, and so he gets shot. And this leaves a very big impact on David. And this unknown figure tells David that he has a letter and that he's supposed to give it to someone, and that he's not allowed to like tell anyone about it, and if they check it, then they're gonna steal it and stuff like that. So basically, he tells him to go to an area over the fence, and someone almost catches him, but thankfully they didn't. So after he goes over the fence and then just gets a bag, which the other person told him, that would contain the soap, then like I think a rag or something like that, to help him during his journey. And so afterwards he left, and then he went to another place, and then the person, like, it goes back to a flashback of that unknown person again. It's like, trust no one. And then like he goes to the city, and he's never actually been to the city before because he's basically spent almost all of his life in that camp, so he's not used to that stuff. But he looks around, and then he looks into like a bakery, and then there's this one dude who's like working, and he's like, oh yeah, do you want this bread and stuff like that? He's like, oh yeah, do you have bread? And he's like, oh yeah, just wait a moment. And so like the worker tells him about like Saint Patricia, so like how she's gonna protect him, then gives him a card and stuff like that. And then he brings out the police who were looking for him because he escaped the camp. So David, being betrayed, he runs away immediately, and so he looks somewhere else. Then while he's running towards somewhere, there was this lady that needed help with her garden, and I think she confused him. I think she's like, oh yeah, just in the nick of time. So she gives him like a basket to give to someone else, and then she gave him money so that he could give the basket to the people that needed it. And then she gives him directions, and so he goes there, and then he sees like a lovely wedding and stuff like that. But the lady, she's like, oh yeah, what took you so long to get the wine, and then whatever. And then she's like, oh yeah, I don't allow like little kids or whatever to be in the wedding, so she just kicked him out. But I mean, at least he got the money. So then afterwards he was like taking showers in like the sea and stuff like that with the soap that he had. He was just relaxing, at least he had a little bit of money. And then there was another point in time where he was just walking, and then there were some people that needed help with like gas because he was talking to him. And they were like, oh, they were like talking about something. They were trying to speak in Italian, I think, to like try to communicate with him because they didn't think that he spoke English. But in the camp there were lots of different languages, so like he learned all of them and what they were saying. So he was like, oh yeah, it's fine. And they're like, oh, you speak English? And then he's like, oh yeah, I just need a gas refill. That's what the other guy said. So David went, got the gas refill, and then he got a lot of money. And then after he got the money, then he was just walking around like in the forest and stuff. And so basically what he found was just like this other kid, I think. This other kid that like trying to tackle him or whatever. He was trying to tackle him and try to like punch him in the face for whatever. He didn't know like what in the world, like he was just walking and then someone just tried to punch him, and so the other guy stopped punching him, and he left. It's pretty weird. And then there was like a hut that was burning, which is like pretty surprising. So then he went there, saw that there was a girl tied up, so he saved her from the fire, and then I think he passed out afterwards. So then the next day, he woke up, and then there was like a lot of people that he didn't know. And so basically there was like, it was the mother and the daughter, and then the mother was like, oh, thank you so much for taking care of our daughter. And so and they were just like, oh yeah, you can stay with us for a little bit if you want. So he's like, oh yeah, sure. And so then the girl who, like, the one that he saved, was talking to him, and then she was like, oh yeah, thank you for saving my life. He's like, oh, it's all right. And then he's just like, why do you keep looking at me? And then he's like, she was like, do you hate me? And he was like, no, I don't hate you. And then she was like, do you love me? And then, he stayed silent or whatever. But turns out that she has the brother, and the brother was the one that punched David. And so he's like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, I didn't know. I just thought you were like one of the kids that was like bullying my sister or whatever. Please don't tell my parents. He's like, all right, I guess. And so afterwards, he spends time like with the girl, with Maria, I think that was her name. Yeah, but he spent her time with her. They were like, she led him to like a library that they had in their house, just showing him around. And then the parents were like, oh yeah, no, come with us, like, go do something else. And so like the parents were just cornering him. They're just like, oh yeah, where do you really come from? Like, why are you here? And then he's just like, oh, it's because I work for the circus. And they're just like, oh, well, how do your parents? Like, no, because they're getting suspicious. They're just like, why in the world is this boy here? And so they were like, the guy tried to like touch David, and so he flinched, and then like the parents immediately felt bad. And so that night he was like, oh yeah, I'm not staying here anymore. They're getting suspicious. So he had packed all his things and then left. And so afterwards, he just kept walking. And then he was just like, at one point he was all the way at the mountains, and then he found like this old lady like painting. And so he was just looking, and then she was like, oh, I'm so uninspired or whatever. And then she was like, yeah, can I paint you? And then David is like, oh yeah, sure, you can paint me. And so she was painting him, and then he was like, oh my goodness, it's like so awesome, but I see something else in those eyes, because he's sad, of course, like he's traumatized being at this camp, being forced to work, none of that stuff. And most of the part in the movie talks about like him not being able to smile. Like even Maria, like the little girl, she was like, oh yeah, you should smile more, and then he like tries to smile, but yeah, and so basically the old lady invites him to her house, and so they were talking and stuff like that. And they really got along, because the old lady started talking about how she used to have a son, but he tragically passed away. And David doesn't have his mom, like he's still trying to look for his mom, for his dad. And so basically, they bond over that. It's like mother and son. And so basically he was like, oh yeah, please don't tell anyone, because she was like trying to discover like where his parents was, and he's like, I can't tell you, but I care for you. And then she's like, I care for you too. And then they were passing over the border to go to Denmark, I think, I believe. And so then there was like the police, the government. And so the officer asking for the lady's ID, and she's like, oh yeah, here you go. And for the boy, she's like, oh yeah, he forgot it, he forgot it. That's my grandson. And the officer was getting kind of suspicious until the lady sidetracked him about like talking about some joke or something like that. And so the other officer laughed, and yay! Then they went to Denmark, and then he was walking around the shops looking around, and then he suddenly found this like weird book. And he turned it around, and it was his mom. And his mom had wrote a book about his life, like her life, and like how she lost her son and her husband. Then he's like, oh my god, that's my mom. And the old lady is like, oh my god, really? So then she reaches out to them, and so finally the mom and the son reunite, and that's where the story ends. I just love that movie so much. It's so emotional, and it's so kind. Like, oh my god, I love that movie so much. I totally recommend it if you want to watch it with your family and stuff like that. Like, it's not inappropriate or anything, thankfully. So yeah, that's it. Thank you so much, and have a good day. Take care.